Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Road to the ProcureTech Cup, episode 7 of this 2024-2025 season. I'm Joël Collin Demers, a consulting principal at Pure Procurement and editor at the Pure Procurement newsletter. Thanks so much for being here. We're on the road to the ProcureTech Cup, so I'll just bring this up on screen here. The journey continues. So we've been privileged to have some demos from providers in the last couple of weeks. Source-to-pay providers, master data management, governance, and enhancement providers, sourcing providers, and today is our first spend analytics demo. And so I'm very, very happy to have Richard Brown with us here today, so that we can present the solution that they've got for us. Thanks so much for being here, Rich.
Thanks so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure.
And I think you head up global sales and marketing for Anvil. Is that right?
Yes, I do. So I've been enrolled now for just coming up to 2 years. A little bit scary, always saying that. But, we've been on a hell of a journey, particularly in the last 12 months or so. So, yeah, looking forward to sharing a few of the fruits of our labor with you all.
Very cool. Very cool. So if I bring up the agenda, same thing as every week, right? If you've been tuning in, we do the company overview for about 7 minutes here. We'll get Rich to educate us on where Anvil comes from, where they're going, what they can do for us as procurement professionals, their unique value proposition and ideal customer profile. And then we'll dive into the meat of it all, right? The solution demo. I try to get at least 15 minutes, if not more. We are pre-recording this episode today, so some of us will be in the chat to answer questions. So if you have questions as you're going through the demo, make sure to drop them in the chat, and we'll make sure to respond as best we can going through the demo and the presentation here. And then finally, I'll take out the Pure Procurement ProcureTech market map. And I know that's a mouthful, but I like mapping the solutions to it every week so that we have a common language, a common vision on, okay, what does Anvil do versus these other solutions that we've looked at in the last couple of weeks. So that's what we've got on the menu, and we'll get started right away. Richard, I'll hand it over to you. I think you wanted to present a couple slides for us, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So all ready to do that just now.
All right, let me bring that up, and I'll let you take it away.
Fantastic. Alrighty. Well, look, a quick couple of minutes on who we are and our background and who we're working with. So firstly, Anvil had quite an interesting, origination, you could say. So we were actually born out of a procurement services company or group of companies where the tools were used by consultants all over the world for 5 or 6 years prior to our inception. And really the tools were just developed to make the consultants be better at their jobs. So it's very much tools built by practitioners, very much for practitioners. But what the group of companies found as the years went by is that the clients really liked the tech. They wanted to keep that after the consultants had gone away. And then that essentially was the birth of Anvil. So that was a couple of years just now. So the brand came along, I came into the organization, and 2 years on, things are getting really quite exciting. We've got 6 products that we offer into the marketplace. Won't have time, sadly, to show all of those to you today, but we will be touching on a good number of them. And for us, it was, really important to go just beyond the world of spend. There's an awful lot of spend providers out there that offer a variety of products, but we wanted to do so much more. So hopefully I'll deliver a couple of those insights into you today. In terms of some of our more unique value propositions, again, we'll touch on 1 or 2 of these, but what made Anvil a little bit different for me, and one of the many reasons I came on board at Anvil, was the fact that it's so much more than just what I call color and movement. So, pretty charts are great, visibility is good, but actually it's insights that are really powerful through the world of spend, and a tool that can do so much more. So at Anvil, we bring in thousands of external points of data. I'll explain a little bit more of that into the end. So we actually, almost spoon feed users with insights, say, right, these are the top 5 categories you should be going after. And by the way, based on the shape of these categories, this is how you actually unlock these savings. Carbon is another really big one. We'll touch on that one today. We do scope 3 carbon-based emissions, carbon accounting, you could say, and that's a big part of our carbon management product. And those really come together to form our unique value proposition. A third point that I will touch on really quickly is how quickly we develop and what we're doing around AI at the moment, particularly around very practical uses. And we'll touch on that a little bit. And then last, but certainly not least, is our deal customer profile. So ideally, we would say for us, most of our customers will group around $500 million to about $5 billion per se. But we do a lot of work actually with smaller organizations as well. We have different licensing model, enterprise at the very top end, that the majority of these organizations would be on in front of you just because they're bigger in nature. But we do an awful lot around SME as well. So if you are looking to get started with in the world of spend and you want a world-class solution for less than the price of an analyst, then particularly, with smaller organizations that might just be looking at a single headcount versus buying a tool, then that's a market that we slot nicely into as well.
Very cool. I'd be interested to know, Rich, like you said, the tool is being used essentially before you commercialized it as a solution. How long has it been around, right? How long has the consulting firm part of the company been using the tool, and how long has it been evolving over that 2 years?
Yeah, really, really good question. So that was around 6 years or so, was my understanding, was the absolute inception point of the Anvil toolkit back in its old UI and the old appearance that it used to have. And then over the years, it then moved forward. Those consulting practices have been around for 15 or 20 years. They're very well known. Our biggest sister company is 4C Associates, based with us in West London as well. But really the inception of Anvil was, about 5 or 6 years ago. And then we span out about 2 or 3 years ago, just now.
Okay, very interesting. Cool. And I think you've got a demo prepared for us, so I'll bring this up on screen here, and we can get started and get to the meat of it, right? I'm interested to see how you handle carbon and those external sources, right? How many of them you have, where they come from, all that sorts of questions, which I'm getting ahead of you.
No, sounds good. Look, I think all of that's ahead. So let's jump in. In terms of Anvil, it's just an online platform, nothing super fancy going on just here. Access with a username, password, or alternatively single sign-on, as I've gone in just there. Once you are then in as an organization, you then have the modules in front of you flowing on nicely from that wagon wheel, just based on what you're subscribed to. Organizations can cherry pick. Our average customer, for example, has about 2 to 3 modules on average, just there. We'll kick off with spend, because that's the meat of things today. Now, if you're a client going in, typically you just click the tile and you go straight on in. Just as a very quick mention, we do an awful lot of work with private equity as well through Cube of Cubes, hence why I've got that demo environment as well. But we won't go into that one today. Should also say, just as a point aside, we do have dedicated pages on our website, gives you a little bit more information into how we do what we do. And we also do have some short demo videos on there for each of them as well. So firstly, in terms of spend then, very easy user interface to use. You can click absolutely anywhere that you'd like to throw on filters. You can blow things up to full screen, ideal for situations like today, or perhaps presenting back to a team in the room. We've then also got a plethora of additional filters fully available as well. In terms of the summary page, there's nothing super fancy going on just here. It's really just a top level overview of the organization with a few key dashboard items. Should say that the Anvil tool is really configurable. Each of our clients get 2 development days completely free of charge every single month, and that gives us the ability to build out additional custom widgets for clients and actually custom dashboards that would sit along the top. So whether that's change on change analysis, deep tail spend analysis, we can do an awful lot more above and beyond just what comes out the box, or the vanilla product, as I call it.
Do you, Rich, like, do you find customers take advantage of those 2 days, right? Are you proactively going out and saying, how can we make the solution better for you every month?
We do. So a big part of what we do with clients initially is that, as a procurement team, whether they've got a tool today or not, there'll be a set number of reports or, overviews that they report back into the business. So that's often the first point of configuration, just to make sure that, the views that they're used to seeing and the stuff that they're used to presenting back to the organization, they can do from day one. So that's really important. And then we just find, as the months and years go by, little ideas drop in, or where our, consultancy team might say, look, we've developed X, Y, and Z recently for other clients. They've been able to do this with it. Is this something that you'd like to see? And that's just how it starts to flow. So, if you do go into the client environments, what you find is that the longer they've been a client, the more dramatically different it looks to this as time goes on.
I like it.
Wonderful. So where the Anvil tool really starts to then diverge from, lots of tools that I've seen in the marketplace that are really just visibility focused is within the deep dives. So there's a couple of things that we do. Firstly, when we take the client's data, do all of the categorization and all of the data cleansing, once we then do that, we actually classify it to a common taxonomy. Now, of course, when we give it back to the client, we do so in their own taxonomy. So they've got everything as they'd expect it. But critically, because we normalize everything to that common taxonomy based over around 2,000 previous engagements that we've done, we've got this huge data lake. And what that does is it gives us the ability to infuse the client's data with a huge amount of external insights. Some of them we'll cover off today. What we then also do is we overlay these 4 algorithms, or levers, as I call them, to actually interrogate the data and actually give us some functioning insight. So that's really important. So I'll jump into an example of both of those just now. We'll touch on materiality, our first one in the top left. So when we look at the client's data, what we're trying to understand is how material is that spend within the marketplace and within that category. So, how big a player are you in that market? How much does your spend matter to a particular supplier, and thus how much buyer power might you have? So where we've got a darker green color here, that shows you're above the 75th percentile. You're quite a big fish in that pond. Where you've got a lime green color shows you're much of a smaller player. So you might want to, adopt a slightly different strategy in that case. As we then click into any of these, for example, I'm going to go into the biggest one just here within this fictitious organization. Their biggest spend is within building construction and groundworks. And what you can then start to do is look at it from a point of view of starting to try and understand where you've got the biggest amount of spend. And just here within this supply, we've got quite a high amount of spend, but actually we've only got material spend in one area, one jurisdiction, just one of our sites or business units, depending on how you've divided your business. So straight away, is this an example of rogue spend, for example? Or, could there be the opportunity here of rolling up the spend in Miami into the Bakery Street site, for example? So lots of insights that can be garnered. Of course, from a category management point of view, there's an awful lot you can do here to really get into the nitty gritty and go into the weeds. More from a management point of view, you'll probably just head to the insights, which we'll do in a moment. In the interest of time, we've got time to go into a second one. This is growth. This is really key. And what we find with growth is that organizations typically are all over maybe their 1 or top 2 highest area, but actually they lack the visibility today and the tools to go a little bit below the waterline at areas that could be, dramatically, potentially really out of control. Take utilities here. Spend year on year is up more than 100%. Suppliers actually have slightly consolidated. But as we get down a little bit more, we can then start to see by level 2 and level 3, those areas of growth that are really exploding. My goodness, water usage charges are really high. Why could that be? And then just along the bottom, this is a common theme across the tool. We've got these sliders. You can start to play around with, the really big opportunities over 200K, for example, and then suddenly an awful lot of potential names and indeed projects that you could then kick off there as a procurement team.
That's pretty interesting, Rich. I'm just wondering, like from a setup standpoint, right? Like, how do I get all of my data in here? I know you referred to the cube of cubes piece as well at the beginning. So could you just give us paint us a picture in terms of what it takes to be able to set something like this up?
Yeah, what implementation looks like. So essentially we'll take data directly from your ERP. That's either a flat file dump that you just send to us on a monthly basis if you'd like the monthly refreshes, which we offer into the market at no additional cost. Alternatively, we can connect our API into your ERP system. We even have some clients, though, at varying sizes, some small, some large, that don't even have ERP. They just have raw invoices every month. So we use our AI-powered OCR scanning large language model technology to strip what data we need from those invoices to then play through a solution for them. So regardless of how messy you think your data is, regardless of how many languages it's in, regardless of how many jurisdictions you work in as a client, maybe sat listening to this, we can definitely help you.
And just to add on that, like that final layer of complexity, if I have 80 ERPs, right, and they're all, have the same data structure, that's where the cube of cube concept comes in.
The cube of cubes actually is more different organizations and more sort of portcos, you could say, and comparing data across businesses as part of private equity. Actually, our standard product Joel would probably handle that quite nicely. We do have a number of global clients who operate in up to 90 jurisdictions, 20 different languages, 20 ERPs, for example. So we bring that all together. And the way that we'd sort of slightly cubesify it is that you could then have filter panel based on different business units. And that's where you can then bring that together. But if there was ever an element of additional lenses that the client would like, if these entities are perhaps operating quite differently, then that's something that we can do as well. We can take a bit more of a cubesify type approach, of course.
It's a new verb for me, cubesify, but I love it. I gotta say, I think I'm gonna put it in the lexicon.
Good. So essentially, there's an awful lot going on under the hood, to coin the American term. But if you don't want that level of detail, that's fine. You'll just go straight to the insights. And what the tool's going to do for you here is call out the level of opportunity. Now, we always say to CPOs, don't write this into your budget for next year. But what actually we find is that the approximations are pretty accurate. We do have a number of clients that have come in, they've had similar approximations to this, and they've absolutely smashed it in the first year. And what the tool will do is it will compile a full opportunity matrix based on a level 3 breakdown of every single category that you have. However, we won't go into all of those today. What I am going to focus on is the top 5. So the tool is calling through a top 5 here based on an approximation of 20 million worth of savings available. And the way in which it gets to that is it firstly uses all of those algorithms that we touched on very briefly. So it will start to, build a real in-depth understanding of the category. It'll also give you some nice narrative detail idea for annual category planning and decks just there. And then it's then going to have a really good look at that category and overlay a procurement lever strengths model to say, right, there's 20 million worth of opportunity of savings here. Based on how amenable that category is, what we're saying here is that this is based on, the strongest leaning to a compete-led scenario. And if you mouse over any of these, you could then start to see the strategies that should be deployed here to actually start to dig some of those savings out. What we additionally do is we can overlay an inflation lens at category level to show you, right, based on this category and the various different, ingredients of inflation, you could say, that goes into this category. What we're saying is that based on the latest indices, if you were to take this spend to market tomorrow, you're going to see £3 million worth of tailwinds or headwinds, I should say, essentially. And a little bit of turbulence based out there in the marketplace. And by the way, here's the breakdown of that inflation. So not necessarily you're going to have to pay an additional 3 million, but just being aware of the nature of the storm that you're stepping out into. This is also ideal for annual contract negotiations with suppliers, where they're coming in and say, oh, Joe, it's been a tough year for inflation. I'm going to have to put the prices up 10% next year. And you can look at this and say, well, actually, based on the breakdown of that good or service that you offer us and the inflationary indices that flow into it, I'm only seeing 3%. So can you help me understand the difference, etc.?
That was my question, right, around like the sources behind this, right, and what you're able to to use in those types of situations with suppliers in those discussions. Because I see the principle as being very powerful, but then it's how do I know I can trust what's coming out of that tool?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So that's a combination of our large data lake, so all of that external data and all of the data that we've collected so far, but it's also then based on just over 1,000 external indices, and that's government-led indices, national banks, that sort of thing that flows that data in. So these are the most official inflationary-based indices, CPI, and all sorts of other ones. And as I say, we take it from around 1,000 or so sources globally.
Okay.
Perfect. And just to wrap really quickly on spend, we also offer more of a top level inflationary overview. We do it by sensitivity. So whilst I can provide any of our clients with a crystal ball and tell them where inflation is going to be next year, what I can absolutely do is tell them, based on the makeup of what you buy as an organization, if inflation was to move 1% one way or the other within those indices, this is going to be the net impact on your organization. And here we can mouse over, and over time you can get little graphs and it'll show you it for each of the categories. And likewise, we offer a top level overview by level 1, what you spend the most money on and what's happening in inflation in those areas as well. But just in the interest of time, that in a nutshell is spend. I'm going to come on very briefly to carbon. This is an area where, I think from an Anvil point of view, we've positioned ourselves within market. I think that market is, going to come to us very, very quickly just now. So within the world of carbon, our website, again, is a really, really fantastic tool for being able to give you an overview of exactly what we offer. Again, the short demonstration video just there, etc. But really, within the world of carbon, this is essentially how it looks. So we're bringing together a huge amount of financial based data. We're then also bringing together an awful lot of data from the client side using their spend, and it's then being able to compile very exact spend and quantity-based carbon approximations. So based on what you're spending out into your supply chain, this is then the net impact of the carbon. So essentially, what we'll do is we'll have a range of different tabs. The first one is what we call the spend carbon baseline. And this is just looking into, for the first time, most likely, is that organization, what's their scope 3 impact? So from here, we can filter on months, business units, categories, etc., just to really build up an approximation of what our impact is going to be. Beyond that, the tool then starts to take on a number of additional guises, so we can start to look through the lens of quantity. So quantity can be particularly useful, particularly when it comes to the world of raw materials and also higher value items as well. In addition to that as well, what we want to do with clients is not just be able to give them their scope 3 emissions. That is the reason that the majority buy it, fine. But what we do with our clients, we go on a journey. And we have within Anvil a project management tool that unfortunately we won't have the time to touch on today. But as soon as those carbon reduction projects are entered into it, we can then blow that through into the analytics, show what it is that you're working on, how that's going to impact the organization, and most importantly, what you have delivered into the organization and exactly what that looks like. So that's more the reporting side. What we'll additionally do is carbon insights. This works a little bit similar actually to spend insights that we were on just a few minutes ago. Within the world of carbon-based insights, what we do here is, again, we're compiling your organization's data and overlaying that with many other engagements that we've had. And it may well be that you've got a spend of, £500,000 a year on iPhones, let's just say, or, smartphones. We'll overlay that with other organizations where they may well be spending a similar amount, but driving a lot less carbon. So suddenly this could well be an area of opportunity for them. And again, here we use a reduction affinity matrix with 3 R's, just to try and provide a little bit of insight into the world of, this is where you've got opportunities to save. This is what you can go after as well. And also within this, we do have, won't go into it today, but big world mapping products where you can compare sourcing from different countries, what's going to be the carbon impact, and you can do some lovely side-by-side comparisons as well.
However, and you used the word that I latched onto, which is approximations, right? Because I find this is like a very hard problem to get visibility to, especially scope 3 emissions, where it's your suppliers and your suppliers, etc., and you're going down the supply chain. So what have you found to be like the hardest challenge in terms of making sure that those approximations are as trustworthy and as realistic as possible?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So all of our approximations are very much in line with the greenhouse gas protocol. So that's the product that we feature. Within that as well, we do work with accreditors as well. I think that's been a little bit of a stepping stone, just making sure that we don't just offer these advanced approximations, but we can actually get accreditors in to give that official tick of approval if that's what the client needs. But I think, ultimately from our side, it has been a bit of a silver bullet for organizations. We've had clients come on board that have tried to do this perhaps through RFI. They've gathered all of the data they can from their suppliers, but ultimately only gives them a view of perhaps 5% of their spend. So this is a lovely broad brush way of really going the whole hog. I think probably the biggest challenge for us is just getting all of the data sometimes that we need from clients. So spend is a great place to start, and there's very few fields really that we need, but to get the closest approximations, we do start going up and down what we call this accuracy pyramid. Usually takes about 6 months, and that's where we start touching on aspects such as quantity. But really, this isn't an area that we particularly struggled. I would say for clients, it has been an area for them that is been a bit of a silver bullet, I have to say.
Cool. Yeah, I find that really interesting, right? Because if I have P card spend, that's one thing, right? And I can get a certain level of visibility into the carbon associated to that spend, but it's not going to be the same than having, purchase order, ASN data, delivery addresses, etc. And then you're able to do probably much more interesting things with that.
Yes, so the more granularity of detail, the better. When it comes to sort of P cards or maybe energy usage in a shared building, that's just where we sort of bring our team of experts in, and they'll do a range of kind of approximations on those approximations, so to speak. So they can often be really good, but more granularity, the better in terms of spend on units of energy, or we do a lot around scope 2 as well for clients around sort of intercompany travel. And again, if we got those invoices from the airlines, etc., the class of travel, that's where the approximations get better and better.
Very cool.
Perfect. Just in the interest of time, just going to do 1 minute on the final product to touch on today, because this is a little bit more future focused. We have market and inflation analytics. So this combines an awful lot of commodity based data. So you can search on any major commodity here, overlay charts, be able to filter based on time zones, and also get some insights and observations there. We also do an awful lot with various different inflation indices, whether it's more European, more US, that we can flip over to here, CPI, PPI. You can really build that narrative and that insight on anything. We do a lot around wage bandings, whether it's for nursing, healthcare sectors, minimum wage in different countries. Do a lot also around buyer power indexes. We'll take data from some of our e-sourcing partners here, and we'll play that through the tool as well, just to try and judge whether it's a buyer's market or a seller's market there. And then last but certainly not least is we do Porter's 5 forces based analysis into each of those major category areas. And whilst I can't show you because this is client by client that we do this, but we do price alert graphs. So that's where a commodity may well really dip off, but as we well know, often the pricing stays high until you're alerted to the fact that the markets have come down. That's why we do those alerts proactively for clients. And then last but certainly not least, just here, is we used to have a little feature here where we do a regional supplier overview. So we'll actually be able to suggest suppliers to be used. However, that's all going to be replaced by this big AI tool, and that's all going to be around supplier discovery and supplier sourcing. And that is something that is 90% finished in development at the moment. We've got the whole UI and it's broadly working, but it does need to get production environment ready. So that's going to be done within the next couple of weeks. And that supplier sourcing piece of functionality will very simply just sit within this module, so you do get everything as part of the buy-in for this module. But look, Joel was keen to leave a little bit of time for any final questions, and of course that final 8-minute segment as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe I'll switch over to that. It's a good segue, right? Because you talked about road mapping, developing new functionalities, that sort of thing. One last question I had on your demo, though, on that last piece, the market analysis, market intelligence, is I find that very interesting just and I'd like to know more about how you license it, in the sense that, if I'm as a procurement team or organization going to go get access to a lot of those private indices, like there's a significant cost there. So I'm wondering, like from a licensing standpoint, like I guess you have the licensing per module, or could you speak to how you license the solution? And then, from a market index standpoint, like, is that priced in as well? Is that on top, right? I'd be curious to know how you structure that.
Yeah, good question. So within all of our modules is a bit of an all-you-can-eat mentality. So as soon as you bought in, you get everything. In terms of those, over 1,000 or so indexes there that we're taking data from, that is publicly accessible data points. So it doesn't attract an additional cost. Okay. If a client has a subscription to something, however, we can then blow that through the solution just for them. I don't see an issue with that. Technically, that's absolutely fine, as long as they're licensed to have it go into an additional tool. Then that we can blow that through, and that I would say is a principle that we apply right the way through the solution. A big part of our revenue, vast majority of it, is through our licensed products, our off-the-shelf products, the 6 that we've gone into today. But we do an awful lot of custom analytics for clients as well. So whether that's PPE optimization for the UK National Health Service, we do things around fraud protection, looking through data is an area that we've been drafted in. So we do a lot of custom analytics for clients as well, and that can often seep into our mainline product offerings as well.
Cool. And I know we're getting short on time here, so just to wrap up, You know, what we saw today was that first spend analytics piece. I put sourcing, or you know, we could debate whether or not it fits into category management or sourcing, but the market intelligence piece. We spoke to the risk element, and we saw some of the carbon emission functionality as well. So yeah, like is there anything you'd speak to in terms of, you know, partnerships, how you'd integrate with other solutions, your roadmap, which you alluded to a bit earlier as well, right? Given this is how you sort of fit into the overall ProcureTech market.
Yeah, really good question. So on the partnerships front, we partner with a number of e-sourcing solutions. So if people would like the, you know, the RFX and the e-auction side. So I saw that one of our partners, Market Dojo, presented just a couple of weeks on the show. We also partner with ScanMarket as well. And then we then have a whole plethora of service delivery partners around the world. So i.e. consultancies. So our tool is, you know, fantastic at, you know, digging up opportunities for areas to go to save. But if you don't have the resource today to actually execute on those, that's where our partners come in. So of course, our sister companies like Procure4, EBIT, and 4C Associates, but we also then have some really big partners globally that deliver on that. In terms of pipeline, one of the areas of the product that we didn't touch on today was risk, but we have an awful lot of technology that's just finalized production that's gone into that for our live clients. So that's around OCR scanning technology into policies, into contracts to see where you're covered against the areas of risk that our tool is pointing out should be most prevalent for you. We're doing developments around, as I say, supplier sourcing. And then we do have some developments planned around that insights page on our spend analytic. We know that that's probably our strongest suit, but that's an area we'd like to beef up even more and just spoon feed our users with more and more useful analytics just there.
Very cool. Well, thanks so much, Rich, for coming on the show. I'll just end by asking you where folks can learn more about Anvil Analytical, maybe contact you as well, right? Where do you want people to find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, our website's always a good place to start, www.anvilanalytical.com. We've also got a YouTube page, and we're also on LinkedIn. Best always to reach out through the website, and then myself or a member of our excellent team can be in touch, and then we can start to guide you through and answer any additional questions you might have.
Very cool. Very cool. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Rich, once again. And for folks who are following along the road to the ProcureTech Cup, you can also subscribe on newsletter.pureprocurement.ca, where we have a recap of every week's demo. We talk about the ones that are coming up, and you know, we prepare the stage for what's to happen in March 2025 on LinkedIn, right? The actual ProcureTech tournament, which is always exciting as well. So, Rich, thanks again for joining me. Everybody watching on LinkedIn Live and YouTube, thanks so much for being there as well, and we'll see you again next week.
Thanks so much.